negation of thought, a vacuous unknowability, a dog in the manger, in truth, which, having no rights of its own, can find nothing else to do than to keep its betters out of theirs. There are two points involved here. First, the claim that certain things have rights that are absolute, ubiquitous, and all-pervasive, and in regard to which nothing else can possibly exist in its own right. And second, that anything that denies this assertion is pure negativity with no positive context whatsoever. Take the latter point first. Is it true that what is negative in one way is thereby convicted of incapacity to be positive in any other way? The word fact is like the word accident, like the word absolute itself. They all have their negative connotation. In truth, their whole connotation is negative and relative. All it says is that, whatever the thing may be that is denoted by the words, other things do not control it. Where fact, where accident is, they must be silent. It alone can speak. But that does not prevent its speaking as loudly as you please, in its own tongue. It may have an inward life, self-transparent and active in the maximum degree. An indeterminate future volition on my part, for example, would be a strict accident as far as my present self is concerned. But that could not prevent it, in the moment in which it occurred, from being possibly the most intensely living and luminous experience I ever had. Its quality of being a brute fact ab extra says nothing whatever as to its inwardness. It simply says to outsiders, hands off. And this brings us back to the first point of the absolutist indictment of fact. Is that point really anything more than a fantastic dislike to letting anything say, hands off? What else explains the contempt the absolutist authors exhibit for a freedom defined simply on its negative side, as freedom from, etc.? What else prompts them to deride such freedom? But dislike for dislike, who shall decide? Why is not their dislike at having me from them entirely on a par with mine at having them through me? I know very well that in talking of dislikes to those who never mention them, I am doing a very coarse thing, and making a sort of intellectual Orson of myself. But for the life of me I cannot help it, because I feel sure that likes and dislikes must be among the ultimate factors of their philosophy as well as of mine. Would they but admit it, how sweetly we then could hold converse together! There is something finite about us both, as we now stand. We do not know the absolute whole yet. Part of it is still negative to us. Among the whats of it still stalks a mob of opaque thats, without which we cannot think. But just as I admit that this is all possibly provisional, that even the Anselmian proof may come out all right, and creation may be a rational system through and through, why might they not also admit that it may all be otherwise, and that the shadow, the opacity, the negativity, the fromness, the plurality that is ultimate, may never be wholly driven from the scene? We should both then be avowedly making hypotheses, playing with ideals. Why is the notion of hypothesis so abhorrent to the Hegelian mind? And once down on our common level of hypothesis, we might then admit scepticism, since the whole is not yet revealed, to be the soundest logical position. But since we are in the main not sceptics, we might go on and frankly confess to each other the motives for our several faiths. I frankly confess mine. I cannot think but that at bottom they are of an aesthetic and not of a logical sort. The through and through universe seems to suffocate me with its infallible, impeccable, all-pervasiveness, its necessity with no possibilities, its relations with no subjects, make me feel as if I had entered into a contract with no reserved rights, or rather as if I had to live in a large seaside boarding house, with no private bedroom in which I might take refuge from the society of the place. I am distinctly aware, moreover, that the old quarrel of sinner and Pharisee has something to do with the matter. Certainly, to my personal knowledge, all Hegelians are not prigs, but I somehow feel as if all prigs ought to end, if developed, by becoming Hegelians. There is a story of two clergymen asked by mistake to conduct the same funeral. One came first, and had got no farther than, "I am the resurrection and the life," when the other entered. "I am the resurrection and the life," cried the latter. The through and through philosophy, as it actually exists, reminds many of us of that clergyman. It seems too buttoned up, and white chokered, and clean shaven a thing, to speak for the vast, slow-breathing, unconscious cosmos, with its dread abysses and its unknown tides. The freedom we want to see there is not the freedom, with a string tied to its leg and warranted not to fly away, of that philosophy. Let it fly away, we say. From us, ay, what then? Again, I know I am exhibiting my mental grossness. But again, hic con hic anders. I show my feelings, why will not they show theirs? I know they have a personal feeling about the through and through universe, which is entirely different from mine, and which I should very likely be much the better for gaining, if they would only show me how. Their persistence in telling me that feeling has nothing to do with the question, that it is a pure matter of absolute reason, keeps me for ever out of the pale. Still seeing that, in things which logic does not expel, the most I can do is to aspire to the expulsion. At present I do not even aspire. Aspiration is a feeling. What can kindle feeling but the example of feeling? And if the Hegelians will refuse to set an example, what can they expect the rest of us to do? To speak more seriously, the one fundamental quarrel Empiricism has with Absolutism is over this repudiation by Absolutism of the personal and aesthetic factor in the construction of philosophy. That we all of us have feelings, Empiricism feels quite sure. That they may be as prophetic and anticipatory of truth as anything else we have, and some of them more so than others, cannot possibly be denied. But what hope is there of squaring and settling opinions unless Absolutism will hold parley on this common ground, and will admit that all philosophies are hypotheses, to which all our faculties, emotional as well as logical, help us, and the truest of which will, at the final integration of things, be found in possession of the men whose faculties on the whole had the best divining power. End of chapter 12.